Hello and welcome to the latest episode of the L15 Weekly Podcast, giving you the latest news, views and opinions from the football world. On this week's episode, we are joined by Nigel from the Atalanta pod, where we talk all things Atalanta and how their season's gone and their incredible UEFA Champions League run. We are also joined by Stephen from Playmaker Stats, where he answers the biggest question in town, which is why is the Championship so crazy? Also coming up are your heroes of the week, some UEFA Champions League reaction, and all the latest gossip and news surrounding the football world. Let's get straight into it. On this week's episode of L15 Weekly, we're going to be going under the microscope and we're going to be talking to Nigel from the Atalanta pod. Nigel, how are you?
Very well, Lewis, thank you.
Okay, so the first question I've got for you, Nigel, is how has this season gone for you so far?
Well, if you stick just to Serie A for the moment, it's been really good. Maybe not quite as good as last season, but considering we were in the Champions League this year, terrific. We're set up there in fourth at the moment. We're maybe a little bit off the Scudetto this year, but we've been touching distance for a huge part of the season. But generally been really good. We played beautiful attacking football. We've picked up some terrific results, and we've been by distance one of the most exciting teams to watch in Europe. So yeah, big thumbs up from me.
And why do you think you've done this good this season?
Well, I think you've got to go back maybe 2-3 years. I mean, Gasperini arrived in 2015 with Atalanta, and over the last 2-3 years, we've had a really solid plan with the same group of players. If you look at the spine of the team, we've always had Toloi, Palomino. This year, Masiello's gone, but he's always been part of the spine there with Darun and Broiler, and Papu and Ilicic have all been there for the last 3 years, and they've pretty much played all of the season and the majority of the games. Same goes for Gosens and Hateboer. So we've been really consistent in that, both in the tactics and in that team selection and how we've used that squad through the last 3 years. And I think we're getting the results of that now, which is great.
And you've got to the last 16 so far of the UEFA Champions League. You look pretty comfortable in this leg against Valencia, but it is the Champions League, so anything can happen really. But how do has this Champions League run surprised you?
I'll be honest, it hasn't. The very first game surprised me a lot against Dinamo over in Croatia, because we never got going and we never started, and we didn't look like a very good side, and that was a real surprise. We have showed our best football in the last sort of 3-4 games. Against Valencia, we were terrific. In the Ukraine, we were really good. We got the job done against Dinamo when it really mattered, which is important. In terms of maybe going into this one, I'm maybe a little bit more nervous, dare I say it, Lewis. But yeah, up to this point, we've done okay. Yeah,
well, it's been a very good run for you guys. You went toe to toe with Man City. Have you found a balance between the Champions League and Serie A?
It's a very different competition. I think that the team's grown through it. It's like I said, the way we started against Dinamo, we were quite naive. In the Shakhtar game, we were quite naive as well. Our second game, we lost the game right at the end. If we'd shown a little bit more discipline, a little bit more knowledge of the competition, and knowing that actually a draw at home against Shakhtar wasn't such a bad thing, instead we threw everything at it, conceded the goal. But in terms of just generally balancing the fixtures over the season, we've competed well in Serie A off the back of the Champions League games, and that's been a big surprise. But we've done that well off the back of the Europa League games over the last couple of years as well, which is often a bit more tricky because that's on the Thursday. So we're quite well groomed for it these days as a team.
And if you had to pick a player of the season, so right now it's the end of the season, who would you pick as your player of the season?
Josip Ilicic, for me personally. He's been sensational just with the amount of goals he's created, but the amount of goals he's scored, and there's been some absolute beauties in there. I mean, he scored from the halfway line against Torino. He's got 3 hat-tricks this season. He's been absolutely unreal, as Josip Ilicic. So I'd say him, but I'll be honest with you, a lot of fans would say Papu. Papu's been really consistent for a number of years. He's a big fan favourite, and he's been doing it again this year. So I'll say Josip Ilicic, but a lot of people might tell me off for that.
And if you were, you're the manager of Atalanta, who would you bring in the summer, as a signing?
Oh my goodness, that's such a great question. there's a balance between chucking a lot of money at it and going with what works for Atalanta. There's a chap called Matteo Politano. He's currently on loan at Napoli. He's been with Inter and did very well at Sassuolo, who you'll be familiar with. He's a player I've liked a lot. We definitely need that Josip Ilicic, almost sort of 2.0, a backup to him. So that's something we're missing. So Politano's a player I've liked a lot. Yeah, that's a good question though, because I mean, like you said, there's so many players in Europe that you'd love to go and grab and bring into the team, but would they actually work for Atalanta and would they work for Gasperini? Because a lot of his players, when they move on, they never have the same level of joy. So yeah, interesting. I'd go with Politano, but I'm sure there's a few others I could think of eventually.
And you've got Mario Basalic on loan from Chelsea. Do you think he's going to stay perhaps on loan for another season, or will you sign him permanently?
Right, so a little bit of confusion on this. So there is a bit of a mystery that we have actually announced that we're going to take him permanently, or take up our option off the back of the loan.
Yeah.
I believe we announced that around the 2nd or 3rd of December, and again we mentioned it in January. But if you actually go looking for any kind of confirmation from the club, it's difficult to actually find anything out there. So
yeah,
ideally, I'd love to have it done. I think he's been terrific, but I wouldn't be surprised if someone tries to get in there off the back of that. But whether or not it's done and dusted, there is a little bit of confusion out there. So let's hope it's just done and he's our player for the foreseeable future.
Yeah, and the final question I have for you, Nigel, is where do you think, number one, where do you think you will finish in the league? And number two, how far can you go in this UEFA Champions League?
Well, in the league, I think we're probably about where we're going to end up. I think Lazio, Juve and Inter probably too far beyond everybody else at the moment. And we've been very, very consistent in the final run-ins over the last couple of years. So, and we've proved we can get the job done with a result on the line in the last day of the season determining Champions League football, Europa League. So I think we'll probably finish fourth. I think we'll end up where we are at the moment, but that obviously depends on whether we actually finish the season, because we've got a big issue with the virus there. And I'll be honest with you, Lewis, I don't think we are going to finish this season. That's just me being honest with you. I don't think we'll get there. Champions League, anything's possible. I'd love to get to a semi-final. I think realistically that's probably the best hope, but who knows? Anything's possible. Just one more game. I'd love to get beyond Valencia. Anything beyond that is just absolute magic for Atalanta.
Yeah, thank you very much for coming on the podcast, Nigel. It's been a pleasure having you on.
No problem, Lewis. No, nice to speak to you, buddy. Thank you.
It's now time to talk UEFA Champions League on L15 Weekly. We're going to go through all of this week's ties, talk about the aggregate score and what this means for the next round. The first tie we're going to talk about is the Valencia versus Atalanta, which was the highest scoring tie so far. It ended up 4-8 on aggregate to Atalanta, which a total of 12 goals were scored over the two legs. The first leg did happen to end 4-1 to Atalanta. Things looked a bit, another question for Valencia, but they did get themselves some goals in this second leg. It finished 3-4 to Atalanta. Obviously played behind closed doors due to the recent coronavirus fears, but it was at the Valencia stadium. But Valencia, they played okay. They were a lot better than last time, surely. I think they were a bit inspired that maybe they could get a comeback, but unfortunately they were unable to. They gave away a penalty early on. Ilicic put it away. Gamero then scored. Ilicic put away another penalty. Then Gamero scored again. Just a bit of, a pinball between those two. Then Ferran Torres scored, and then Ilicic scored twice again. So Ilicic scored 4 goals in that game. He was incredible in that game. He's just so good. Along with the rest of the Atalanta side, remember. We've just spoken to Nigel from the Atalanta pod about the form in the Champions League. Valencia had the overall possession of the ball, 59% of possession compared to Atalanta's 41%. Valencia had more shots than Atalanta with 16, more chances created with 14, and they had an equal amount of big chances with 4 each. So it was a better performance from Valencia, but not enough. They should have turned up in that first leg to guarantee themselves a result in this one. My man of the match goes without saying, really. Josip Ilicic, who was the player of the match with a rating of 9.7. He was the most fouled player of the match with 4. He scored 4 goals, got 6 total shots, 23 accurate passes, 74% pass success. 2 of his shots were blocked, and the other 4 were all on target. it was an incredible performance from him as well. Won 8 duels as well, 4 ball recoveries and 2 interceptions. So it was really good work from Josip Ilicic, the Slovenian international. He's not too prolific in the Champions League, to be fair. He's only scored 5 goals, and they have all come against Valencia in this last 16 tie. And a bit of a fun fact to do with Atalanta, who are going through to the quarterfinals. It's the first knockout phase they've scored. But the fun fact to do with them, they've scored against every goalkeeper they've played against this season, apart from Kyle Walker, who played obviously in that game where Claudio Bravo got sent off. Edison was injured as well. So Kyle Walker is the only goalkeeper Atalanta haven't managed to find the back of the net against. But Atalanta march on in this brilliant UEFA Champions League run. Next tie was one that was won by an equal goal difference to the Atalanta-Valencia tie, and that was RB Leipzig versus Tottenham Hotspur. RB Leipzig went into this game with a 1-0 lead on the North London club, with the away goal as well, and they really sealed the deal in this game with a 3-0 victory against Tottenham, leading to a 4-0 aggregate victory. Marcel Sabitzer scored twice within 21 minutes to give the hosts the lead. And Emil Forsberg came off the bench with virtually his first touch of the game, finished off, one of the only chances of those last few minutes. But another poor performance from Tottenham Hotspur. It just really odd. You'd have thought Mourinho would have come in and made the defensive area a bit better. People are saying there's been no improvement in attack. I don't think Mourinho's a really brilliant attacking coach, but he is a really good defensive coach, and I don't see what's going wrong here. They've got a pretty decent back line. If they played Vertonghen and Alderweireld together, maybe Japhet Tanganga at right back, and perhaps try playing Ben Davies at left back, or maybe try play Danny Rose at left back. But they've shipped him off to Newcastle because he's fallen out with Danny Rose. But enough about Tottenham. They were absolutely schooled by RB Leipzig, and in fact the youngest manager to win a knockout tie, Julian Nagelsmann. Marcel Sabitzer was my man of the match with 2 goals, an 8.6 rating, 3 total shots, 45 accurate passes, 84% pass success, 3 duels won, 2 aerials won, and 10 recoveries. It was just a really good game, a complete performance from RB Leipzig. Every time Spurs got something going with a bit of possession, there were RB Leipzig in their 3s and 4s pressing to get the ball back. It was really refreshing to see, and a very well accomplished performer from RB Leipzig. So it'll be interesting to see how they get on in the next round. Next game we're going to move on to talk about are from Wednesday night's games, which we'll start with a game that was behind closed doors, which was at the Paris Saint-Germain game, which resulted in a 2-0 victory for Paris Saint-Germain, who came back from a 2-1 loss to Borussia Dortmund in the first leg. Neymar opened the scoring with a nice header, and then Juan Bernat scored, and those goals were enough to overturn the deficit from the first leg and send Thomas Tuchel's men through, against his former club. The Borussia Dortmund, they were below par, really, and they paid the price, really. They're not going to be in the competition any longer. I thought they were really good in the first leg. Emre Can was also sent off in that game, but they were really good in the first leg. Achraf Hakimi looked $1 million, and in this game, he forgot how to defend. Thorgan Hazard, last game, looked rubbish. This game was rubbish. Lost the possession and lost the most duels in the match. It was really awful. Erling Braut Haaland had the least touches of any outfield player to play. It was just a really under par performance from Borussia Dortmund. My man of the match was in fact Angel Di Maria, who created the most chances in the match. They played an 8.1 rating, played 79 minutes, got an assist, a shot, 33 accurate passes, 82% pass success. Really good game from Angel Di Maria, and a really good win for PSG, and that will now see them through into the next round, coming back against Borussia Dortmund. The final and biggest tie that we have to talk about resulted in the current UEFA Champions League champions being knocked out, and that comes in the form of Liverpool. They lost 4-2 to Atletico Madrid in the game. It was a poor performance from Liverpool. They managed to score this time, but Atletico yet again setting up and parking the bus. Liverpool just couldn't really get the ball in the back of the net enough times. Wijnaldum opened the scoring, and you thought, yeah, that's brilliant. And that took the game to extra time. Firmino scored, and you thought, oh, here we go. They may have a chance of getting a win here and getting through to the next round. When Llorente went and scored twice, and then Morata went and scored to seal the victory. Adrian had a poor game, made an error, passed it straight into the midfield, into the Atletico Madrid midfield, and that led to them scoring. Liverpool had 71% possession, 34 shots, and they scored twice. That's pretty ridiculous. My man of the match in this game went to João Felix, who I feel has been harshly critiqued by the press after his move to Atletico Madrid, but I feel he had a decent game here. 7.6 rating, 103 minutes played, an assist, 2 total shots, 19 accurate passes, 79% pass success, 3 chances created, 100% of his shots were on target, won 4 duels and had 3 ball recoveries. So fair play to João Felix, and that leaves Atletico Madrid marching on into the next round. Diego Simeone very passionate about this game. It was very good to see, and they will be through into the next round, Atletico Madrid. Earlier on, we spoke to Steve from Playmaker Stats, and we asked him the question, why is the Championship so crazy and so unpredictable? Let's see what he had to say on the matter.
It's an honour and a pleasure to be asked on, and I was going to kick straight off with the question you asked me of why is the Championship so crazy this season? I thought I'd actually argue it the other way a little bit, play devil's advocate a bit, and argue why shouldn't the Championship be so crazy when that's what we've come to expect from what is obviously one of the most competitive divisions around. If we think of this season, I was having a little think about, what are the reasons behind it being a crazy season, and I can divide basically the teams in the division into 3 rough groups to try and explain why that would be. The first would be the big guns, the teams who, in a lot of respects, are kind of Premier League ready. But as this season's shown, they're actually missing quite a few important ingredients. I'm mainly here talking about the likes of Leeds, West Brom and Fulham. If we kick off with Leeds, they're obviously a really dominant side, obviously to watch, and also in terms of the stats. In terms of shots on target, shots, chances created, key passes, etc., they're always at the top of the stats. But, dominating stats and dominating games even doesn't necessarily guarantee you goals and points. And as everyone knows, the likes of Bamford don't always convert the intensity and dominance that Leeds bring to matches into either goals or points. Obviously, we're talking today, or I am now, the day after Sunday today. So it's the day after Leeds winning, and that's obviously 5 straight wins. So that actually, in a way, is crazy because in January and February they strung together 4 defeats out of 5, which kind of flags up how you could think the division's a bit crazy. But I think if we really look at it, it's basically a case of the Championship punishing teams' weaknesses. Leeds do struggle sometimes to turn chances into goals. And when they do, they come unstuck. It's no coincidence that the 5 games they've just strung back-to-back are 5 games without conceding a goal. If teams score against Leeds, Leeds can struggle, and I imagine they probably will do, even if they get promoted this season. If we turn our attention to West Brom, at times I think they've looked the best footballing side in the division, but they too have their weaknesses. In a positive sense, they've shown resilience to come behind in a lot of games this season, but it's not really healthy to have to rely on coming from behind. And although the likes of Robson Kanu and Charlie Austin have scored a fair few goals between them, I think the centre-forward situation hasn't been properly addressed at the Hawthorns this season. They're not convincing in that respect. And, although they've got the likes of Matheus Pereira, who I think is arguably the best player in the division, that doesn't count for that much if you've not got a reliable finisher to finish all the chances that are being created by them. If we then look at Fulham, I think Fulham also fit into this bracket of kind of a big gun who has got, weaknesses within their team. They've got undeniable quality in the likes of Mitrovic, Kearney and Cavaleiro. But by the same token, they've also got Scott Parker, who's a manager learning his trade. And they do often remind you of a team that, although they're doing a lot of good things, they're still searching for a little bit of an identity. And so, those are the three I'd mention as kind of big guns who have these Achilles heels. And so, in a way, answering your question of the Championship being crazy, although it looks crazy, actually I think it's kind of doing exactly what it says on the tin in terms of highlighting the vulnerabilities of even its best teams. The second group of teams I'd like to highlight are what I'd probably call a strong cast of wannabes. In this bracket, we can throw pretty much half the division, I think, from the teams that have been consistently knocking on the door of the playoffs over the last few seasons. Teams like Brentford, Preston, Bristol City and Derby, to the likes of the historically big clubs who are looking to, in some ways, rediscover their mojo. In this respect, we're probably talking about Sheffield Wednesday, Middlesbrough, Blackburn, Birmingham, QPR, Stoke. And then if we chuck in the two Welsh clubs, Swansea and Cardiff, who've both dropped down from the Premier League in recent seasons, that's like a strong batch of more than a dozen teams who are all casting desirous looks at the Premier League, but who are all actually, they're all gearing up for bigger things, but they're not currently ready to achieve those lofty ambitions. This strong pool of wannabes obviously leads to the Championship looking a little crazy week to week, as form and fortune is changing on an almost weekly basis. And that's exactly what we can see after this weekend's action, where we've got Birmingham in 16th, and you still can't categorically rule the Blues out of the playoff picture. And finally, the third group I'd like to highlight would be basically the teams who I still think they're good teams. I think they're strong sides, but they're maybe a little outgunned compared to the rest of the division. The fact that they're decent sides who can on their day beat anyone also adds to this illusion of a crazy Championship. We'll call this group the upstarts, and as I mentioned, they're good teams with good players who are just a little outgunned in the division. And here I think we're really looking at the bottom two, Luton and Barnsley. Barnsley, if we take them first, despite losing their entire defence last summer, and they've obviously had a managerial change during the season, I think they're a team that embodies this competitiveness in the division. They've got a goal threat. Cauley Woodrow has obviously shown his ability over recent months. They've got some young quality. They've got Jacob Brown, who looks a good prospect. They've got midfield quality in Alex Mowat. And on their day, I think they can beat pretty much anyone in the league. 2 wins over Fulham this season obviously illustrates that. But I think it's also fair to say that the Tykes do look to be punching above their weight quite a bit of the time, and their back-to-back losses to Reading midweek and now Cardiff at the weekend are probably going to prove fatal to their chances of survival this season. I'd quickly also mention Luton, a team who've literally been scoring for fun for 3 seasons, a team really used to winning, a successful team, a good side. They've been beating teams by 4s and 5s in League 2 and League 1. They've obviously now hit a bit of a brick wall in the Championship, but that doesn't make them a bad side. The Hatters have quality, and they've been doing the right things on and off the pitch for quite a while. But despite these qualities, I think they've probably been a bit of a victim of their own success, as you could potentially argue that although they were crowned as champions in League One last season, they weren't quite ready to handle the fire and brimstone of going up into England's second tier. So to summarise, Lewis, I'd probably argue that, I'd take your point about the Championship being a crazy division, and although there are some really genuinely crazy stats floating about, QPR spring to mind. If you look at their goals for, they're obviously scoring a lot of goals, but then their goals against column is quite crazily the other way, conceding a lot of goals. And then you've got the likes of Derby, who have had pretty much the best home form in the division for most of the season, but have clocked up some terrible results on the road, and they've got this quite amazing difference between their home and away form. But I think I'd probably finish by saying you could say that the Championship is no crazier than normal. It's a cliche that it's a very competitive division, and I think it holds true that every team in the division can beat any other team in the division on any given day. And I'd say that this season, maybe more so than others, it's just true that every team has an Achilles heel, and the Championship has this uncanny ability to exploit it and show even the best teams in the division's vulnerabilities from time to time. Anyway, Lewis, I hope that was helpful. Thanks very much again for inviting me onto the podcast. And yeah, hopefully I'll be on here again soon. Cheers.
It's time for everybody's favourite section on L15 Weekly, the original and weekly part of the series where we talk about who has had the best week in the world of football. We choose 5 players and we look at their stats from the game. We also look at their stats from around the season and see how they've got on. Remember, if you've got any suggestions for who you think should be in Hero of the Week, just leave them in the comments section below or tweet them to me at L15 Weekly and we'll see if we can stick them in. First Hero of the Week we have for you is, I think it's the first Hero of the Week that we've had that's actually been on the losing side of a team, and that goes to Alex McCarthy, who was the goalkeeper in Southampton's 1-0 loss to Newcastle United. And let's have a look at his stats. So he got an 8.4 rating, he played 90 minutes, he conceded a goal, obviously, 6 saves, 5 diamond saves, 6 saves inside the box, 1 throw, 1 high claim, and saved the penalty in that game as well. It was a pretty decent display, keeping out lots of strikes from Dwight Gale, who just had a nightmare against him. Keeping out Matt Ritchie's penalty as well. And let's have a look at how Alex McCarthy's stats have panned out this season. So he has played 19 appearances, he's played 1,710 minutes, he's got 4 clean sheets, he's only made 2 errors leading to a goal, 58 saves, 2 penalties faced, and he saved 1 out of those 2 penalties, and obviously those 4 clean sheets as well, with a 6.51 average rating. A really good performance from Alex McCarthy. Could he be in contention for the England squad? Let me know in the comments below or tweet me at L15 Weekly. So a well-deserved Hero of the Week, Alex McCarthy. Next Hero of the Week we have to talk about is a Stade Rennes player. It goes by the name of Flavien Tate, who scored in their 5-0 win against Montpellier. So let's have a look at his stats. He was player of the match with a rating of 9.0. He completed the most dribbles in the match with 5. He created the most chances in the match with 6. Had the most tackles in the match with 2. Was the most foul player in the match with 2. And he won the most duels in the match with 9. Surely that's got to be some sort of record with the amount of stats. He got a goal and an assist. He got 34 accurate passes with 79 pass success. Obviously the 6 chances created. 100% of his shots were on target. Let's have a look at how Tate is getting on this season. Not too great. He's played 17 games, 886 minutes. He scored 2 goals and got 3 assists. He's played 18 key passes, 287 accurate passes with a 76% pass success rate, 4 shots on target, 22 dribbles succeeded and 13 tackles succeeded with 5 clearances and 9 interceptions. So Flavien Tate obviously had a very good game. Just everything that was good about Rennes, it flowed through him. So a very, very good performance and a well-deserved Hero of the Week for Flavien Tate. The next and third Hero of the Week we have goes to Paulinho of Bayer Leverkusen, who scored twice and got an assist in their 4-0 win against Frankfurt last weekend. So let's have a look at his stats from that game. He got the player of the match rating with 9.2. He played 90 minutes, 2 goals, 1 assist, 5 shots, 21 accurate passes, 87% pass success rate, 3 chances created, 2 shots on target, 5 total shots. There were also 4 duels won, he gave away 3 fouls, 4 attempted dribbles and 5 ball recoveries, which was a great performance from Paulinho. A lot of teams looking at signing him. He's only 19, Paulinho, remember. So let's have a look at his stats for the season. He's played 7 games, got 3 goals and an assist. So he's not really been that involved, but he's played 174 minutes, 53 accurate passes with a success rate of 84%. He's also played 4 shots on target, 6 dribbles, 1 tackle succeeded. So he's been really good since joining from Vasco da Gama earlier on in the 2018 season, and I think he's destined for great things. I think a lot of top European teams will be looking at Paulinho and seeing whether he'll be a suitable fit for their team next season. We now move to the SPFL, the Scottish Premier League, for what is the second Celtic player who's made it onto our Heroes of the Week feature, and that goes to Leigh Griffiths, who scored a hat-trick and got an assist in their 5-0 win against St Mirren. Now, I have to apologise for the lack of stats from this league and this performance because of the lack of coverage from the Scottish League, where I get all my stats from. So let's have a look at his stats from across the seasons. We'll go back in time a bit. We'll do the last 3 seasons for Leigh Griffiths. Actually, we'll go down to 2013 for his stats. So in the 2019-20 season so far, he's got 9 goals in 21 games. The season before that, which would be 2018-19, 11 appearances and 2 goals. 2017-18, he 25 games and 9 goals. 2016-17, he scored 12 goals in 23 games. 2015-16, which was his most prolific season, he scored 31 goals in 34 games. In 2014-15, he scored 14 goals in 24 games. And in 2013-14, he scored 7 goals in 13 games. So there we are. That is Leigh Griffiths' form for Celtic over the past few years. Sorry about the lack of stats on that one, reason already explained, but Leigh Griffiths is well-earned and well-deserved team hero of the week. The 5th and final hero of the week goes to Matt Smith of Millwall, who scored a hat-trick in their 3-0 victory over Nottingham Forest. So let's have a look at his stats in that game. He was player of the match with a rating of 9.7. He was the most fouled player in the match with 2. He won the most duels in the match with 15. He got 3 goals, 80 minutes played, 4 total shots, 16 accurate passes, 100% shot accuracy, 16 accurate passes already said, 44 touches, 15 duels won, 14 aerials won with 8 lost. And an incredible performance from Matt Smith. Let's have a look at his stats from across the season. So he's played 33 games and got 11 goals. He's played 1,552 minutes, 11 goals already mentioned. He's played 18 key passes, 161 accurate passes, 26 shots on target, 3 dribbles succeeded, 4 tackles succeeded, 34 clearances, and an interception to go with that. So Matt Smith is the 5th and final hero of the week after his stunning performance against Nottingham Forest. And that brings us to the end of this week's episode. I hope you've enjoyed listening. Thank you very much to Nigel from the Atalanta pod for joining us. You can check out his podcast in the link below. Thank you also to Steve from Playmaker Stats. You can go and check out his Twitter and his website in the links below as well. Thank you very much to both of those for joining me. You've made this episode very, very good. And it's been a pleasure having you listen to this episode. I hope you've enjoyed it. If you've got any suggestions for Heroes of the Week or what else you want us to talk about next week, please leave them in the comment section or Twitter at L15Weekly. And thank you very much for listening, and I'll see you on the next episode. Goodbye.